Good morning. Thank you all for being here. It continues to feel novel to have so many people in person for these events. So really glad that you guys are all here on this gray morning. It's my great pleasure. My name is Jane Panetta. I'm the Nancy and Fred Poses Curator and Director of the collection, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here to the Whitney for the press preview of At the Dawn of a New Age, Early 20th Century American Modernism, a show organized by the curator, Barbara Haskell, who needs no introduction, to say the very least. This show opens to the public on May 7th, and it's an exhibition that brings together works by familiar icons and lesser-known modernists created between 1900 and 1930 to uncover how artists responded to a rapidly modernizing world. The exhibition features new Whitney acquisitions on view for the first time and works that have not been seen at the museum for decades, which obviously feels really exciting to us and for Barbara. The exhibition for us, I think, is a terrific reminder of the remarkable depth of our collection, with so many works being shown here for the first time in decades, as I mentioned. And like so many of the collection exhibitions we've done, particularly over the last 5 years, providing an important opportunity for us as curators to dig in with the collection, in each instance imagining new ways to frame our holdings. And if you haven't seen the show yet, I think you'll feel that right away. The show happily includes many new acquisitions, works by Asami Doi, Aaron Douglas, Henrietta Shore, and Marguerite Zorak, to name only a few of them. And these acquisitions, this work, this research, is part of our ongoing and sustained effort here to build a richer, a more inclusive, and ultimately a more complex collection, and across all decades of our collecting. And as I mentioned, 45 of the works on view are either on view for the first time ever, which is an amazing thing to think about, or for the first time in 30 years, half of the show. I want to thank Barbara and curatorial assistant Caroline Webb for their hard work and dedication to expanding the story of American art by showcasing the work of so many historically overlooked artists in the show. And I'm thinking specifically of Young G, Adele Watson, Blanche Lazelle, just artists that have not historically been routinely associated with this moment. And there are so many works, as I said, that I know Barbara has been eager to show for some time in the building and to show in this kind of new reframing. Generous support for this exhibition is provided by the Barbara Haskell American Fellows Legacy Fund, as well as by Amy and David Abrams, Lori M. Tisch, and many others, and we thank them so much for their support. Public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership for the City Council, also supported this exhibition, which we're very grateful for. So without further ado, I'll introduce Barbara Haskell, who's going to provide a more detailed overview of the exhibition and then lead everyone on a tour afterwards. Thanks so much for coming.
So thank you, Jane. So as Jane said, At the Dawn is actually a survey of America's first avant-garde, that drawn primarily from the collection. It includes 60 works by 48 artists. But just to give you a sense of how new the show is, 19% of the show are new acquisitions. 45% are works that have been in storage for between 30 and 50 years. So it's a whole new view of this period. And by bringing everything together, we not only expand the understanding of this period of American modernism, but we also retell the story by not focusing simply on a few major figures, which has been the case up until now. So we have familiar works, as Jane said, by O'Keeffe, Hartley, Blumner, that are alongside equally groundbreaking artists, but somewhat forgotten: Charles Duncan, Carl Newman, Ben, Walter Pock, Young Guy. And as Jane kind of alluded to, the show has given us an opportunity to begin to address some of the gaps that have existed in the collection by adding work by female artists and artists of color. So you'll see work by Aaron Douglas, Marguerite Zorak, Blanche Lazelle, some of the figures that Jane has mentioned. So the artists in the show, as you probably know, came of age during a time of tremendous change: technological, political, social, the women's suffrage movement, Freudian psychology, Einstein's theory of relativity, revolutions in communications, transportation, architecture, that it seemed as if there were shifts in the world that were really seismic. So Van Brooks, the critic. His claim that Americans were living at the dawn of a new age of mankind has provided the title for the show. But he was not alone in describing the era as one of just tremendous sense of unlimited opportunities. So the critic Walter Lippmann wrote that the world was never so young as it is today. We have a world bursting with new ideas, new plans, new hopes. Max Eastman, who is the editor of the socialist magazine Masses, concurred, writing that there was a sense of universal revolt and regeneration of the just before dawn of a new day of America. Mabel Dodge weighed in, saying that this was an age in which nothing seemed impossible to the human spirit. So the artists responding to that sense of euphoria over the new, the sense of unlimited possibilities, were liberated to reject realism and to really find new ways of expressing their sense of intuitive, subjective responses to the modern era. And you'll see that as you walk through the galleries that the first wave of artists assimilated Fauvism, whose bright colors and kind of expressive brushwork seemed to suggest, to capture that ebullience about freedom and experimentation. But even when the artists adopted Cubism, they remained very loyal to the world, so that for the most part, the artists don't totally reject realism. There's something recognizable in the work because their aim was to tell the public how to experience the world in a new way. Part of it was this idea that intuition was core, was central to kind of the human experience, that it connected us to who we are, and that through abstraction, because it depended on intuition to perceive it, connected people to their own sense of kind of inner core, their own sense of intuition and self-expression, and that in turn would create a more equitable world, that it would, by bringing people in touch with their own feelings, that it would liberate them from the kind of rationalism and materialism, which a number of critics thought had led to fragmentation and kind of psychic isolation. With that said, let's go into the gallery and take a look at how the artists responded to these ideas that were in the air.